be free. School is about to get started back. Tag, the teachers are it, and we can now and relax. Not so fast, family. I know you may be tempted to kick those little boogers out, send them back to college, send them back to school, and wash your hands of it and go just have a good old time. But no, we are preparing for a successful year. And in order to have a successful year, baby, you got to be involved. Now, I am bringing to you an all star cast of characters that are friends of the show. Indeed, Dr. Eric Griggs, New Orleans' finest, and one of my favorites, my producer, and I'm not just saying that because he makes me look good all the time, and that is the Ellis Dean. Please join me in welcoming these amazing guys to the show. Yes! Now, family, before we get started, I have to tell you that we had, even though we've done shows before, we had never officially met in the flesh. And so I pulled them together at the National Medical Association Conference in New Orleans. I did a panel discussion called Lights, Camera, Action when Medicine Meets Media. And I had them along with Vicki Newton, an Emmy Award winning anchor, and Kirk from CBS on the show. And family, let me tell you, you know you are going to have a good show when the night before at the opening ceremony, the mayor of New Orleans is talking about Dr. Eric Griggs. I was like, Dr. Eric Griggs is somebody, y'all. Listen, he is New Orleans celebrity status, and I should have known it when I saw him on the stage last year at NMA with Chelsea Clinton. Now you don't just get to get on stage with Chelsea Clinton and not be nobody. So I should have known, but I didn't know. So family, I want you to know we got a celebrity in the Dr. Eric Griggs with us today. But let's just mosey on to Ellis Dean. Family, I couldn't get an audience.
Stop right there. You can stop right there.
No.
Every time Dr. Goodwin and I were trying to get to Ellis, she was recording and all this stuff. But I tell you that every time we saw Ellis Dean, that he was surrounded by a host of fans. I mean fans. I'm talking about everybody was trying to get an audience with Ellis Dean. I don't know what Ellis Dean is selling, but it's real good because
yes.
It's good. Dr. Griggs, am I lying on Ellis Dean?
No, you're not lying at all. That is a superstar if there ever was a superstar.
Yes. So I want you to know that I have two superstars in my midst. All the time they've been on my show, I knew they were a big deal, but I didn't know they were a big deal. Okay. So thank you for sharing your time with us. And as we are talking today, we're talking about sending those booger bears back to school. And I'm going to tell you what, I have a teenager, so there is nobody on the planet happier than me to send her back. But we do want to prepare for a good year. Now, normally when we think about preparing for a good year and sending them back to school, most of you all think get them the shots, get the immunizations and stuff like that. But it takes a whole lot more to get our kids back to school. Teachers beware. Yeah, it takes a whole lot more. Now, these guys are not just fabulous at their craft, but they're parents. And so I wanted to invite some fellas on because we always have women on talking about back to school, but they are going to appeal to some of the dads. Dads, we don't listen. They're here to call you to step up too and support and show up to more than a basketball game and football game. They didn't know I was going to say that, so I might be in trouble with you, but you know I'm telling the truth. So listen, let's get it started. I'm just going to ask this very generic question. And I'll start with the person who talks the most. Look, they don't even know who I'm talking about because both of them talk a lot, right? Yeah. So whoever answers, really know they talk a lot. What would you encourage parents to do to prepare for not just a good photo shoot on the first day of school like we concerned about, but having an entirely good year throughout the year? Dr. Griggs, I wasn't talking about you, but I'm going to go with you, Dr. Griggs.
As long as that's clear. Well, so honestly, I can't be on the show. I would not be prudent and responsible if I didn't give the message that I give to every parent. This time of year, what parents don't think about is the kids have been out If you've not seen your child before they go to camp, and if it's after a week, God bless, 2 weeks, kids grow and they swim and they eat a lot of stuff that they don't get a chance to eat because they're in other places and they can get away with it. Meaning that can sometimes end up with cavities because they grow, their lenses of their eyes, their vision changes. Meaning that that they swim. They can end up with ear infections. How does it manifest? It manifests about 2-3 weeks into the first quarter, where your child, your straight A child, your baby, that's awesome, spends time in class with their head down. Why? Because they can't see the board. Why? Because they have a headache that could be due to an ear infection or due a cavity. So what I recommend, and this is the way you're talking to guys specifically, you need to take your kids to the doctor, and you need to take your kids to the doctor with you. At the beginning of the school year, it kind of coincides with football season. So just like the athletes are getting prepared for their day at work, the kids go get prepared for their day at work. And, the guys, ladies, y'all are much more diligent about it. But the guys, we go get prepared for football season because we are all armchair couches, and the next day we have all the solutions to all the problems. So what I do recommend is kids getting their eyes, ears, mouth, a head exam from the head up. Then you can talk about to get the physicals out of the way if they want to play sports, if the shots, their immunization records, a whole nine, and it just engages and it keeps a dialogue. It starts a dialogue about the most painful and scary things about going to school. It becomes going to the doctor's office rather than going to that new school, and you're able to start the dialogue about any anxiety or reservations they might have.
I have to tell you, you straight up threw a curveball for me. I was not expecting you to tell me to have them go see the dentist. I wasn't expecting you to tell me to go have their eyes checked because perhaps they can't see. And we personally dealt with this with my daughter that could not see. And, I felt bad because I'm a physician. I should have thought about that, right? So the whole doctor's office, and then, of course, get the sports exam. Yeah, Dr. Griggs threw a curveball. Now, Ellis Dean, I need you to hit a home run. What you got to say?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on my most prodigious colleague by saying, since this show is about mental health, right? Those conditions that Dr. Griggs is talking about can lead to behavioral problems. So if your child has a toothache, if your child is having vision issues, they can manifest, it can show themselves as behavioral issues because they start rejecting school because they can't see the board. If they're having some hearing problems, they may start not wanting to go to school because they can't hear properly. If their teeth are hurting, then they'll start avoiding food. And so those behavioral problems, you've got to notice the behavioral problems in your child, shifts in their mood when they're going to school. And we'll talk about bullying and other things later in terms of social media. But those physical problems can manifest itself as kind of a behavioral issue because they can't find the words to express what's going on with their bodies. And so I think Dr. Griggs is right on. I'm going to erase that as soon as we're done with that because I don't like to compliment him too much. But
you see, we're trying to play nice. You see, we got company and everything. We're trying to play nice.
They did not play nice in New Orleans, so this play nice is not.
I did not start it. You see that?
You started in New Orleans.
Right.
You started in New Orleans. That's why I had to do a first strike.
In New Orleans, though. He did.
He started in New Orleans.
I did.
He is absolutely right. Make sure they have a clean bill of health. And that's just not going to see their pediatrician. That's going to see their dentist, also going to see an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. All of those checkups need to be done before they start school because they can have a clean slate. Because when they're at school, they're going to be exposed to so many different things, both socially as well as physically, that you want them to start off with a clean bill of health.
Absolutely.
And only last piece, Doc, if I can add, and Ellis, I'm sure you'll agree. I don't care how old your child is. Walk your child, especially if it's a new school, walk your child into that building because they treat you differently when they see that you have parents or someone that cares about you. When you walk your child into that new school building and you introduce yourself to the principal, the teacher, how you doing? That's my kid. Ellis, that's my kid. Rhonda, that's my kid. Those are my kids. If there's any problems, call me. It makes a huge difference. I mean, the kids, Ellis, from your background in the school, they treat it differently when you have a parent that is going to come up there and not chastise you, but want to know what What did Ellis do today? Was he sitting beside Eric in class? I told y'all not to put them beside each other. I told you.
Absolutely. It's interesting because last year, you all, my feelings were so hurt. My daughter went to the seventh grade and she did not want me to walk her into school. I mean, listen, I want you to know I cried crocodile tears. I'm sorry. I know, but I cried. She did not want me. She didn't want me walking in there. It was a new school. She didn't want me walking in. And so my feelings were so hurt. They get to a point to where they don't want you to. Now, Dr. Griggs, I actually didn't walk into the school with her. I let her walk into school by herself. But they saw my husband at that school so often that I know they were probably wishing that she didn't even go there. Because
Yeah, so I have a daughter. My daughter is 24. So the solution to that was you let them walk in and do what they want, but you still go to the office separately. And after you ask, can I get a tour of the school? And what happens is, as they see you walking by their class, you just kind of wave and you keep it moving. Oh my God! Yeah, don't worry about that. They need to see you. You got to separate it because they'll hurt you. They'll break your heart. It won't just hurt your feelings. They'll break your heart.
Oh, that is really good. And that reminds me because I remember when she wanted to ride the bus and I didn't want to ride in the bus. She wanted to ride the bus. So we got in, each of us had the same idea and didn't tell each other. We were both driving behind the bus to school and didn't realize I was driving behind the bus to school.
I think that's illegal. I think that's illegal in some states. You can't just be.
We would drive behind the bus to school. And she got to school without both of our vehicles. So, yeah, we're going to embarrass you today, darling, for not cleaning your room up yesterday. But let me just
accessory to a crime.
Let me just say this, though. When Dr. Griggs was talking about having your head down, I actually thought you were going to go into the direction of because they're sleepy. Because also, during the summer months, many times, the sleep schedules are off. They're up with those devices. If we have not enforced to turn the device in by 10, and so they will, their little body, they're used to sleeping until 1 p.m. or what have you. So if your children have not gone back to school yet, this is a really good time to make them get up, start making them get up at the crack of dawn, not letting them sleep and take naps so they can get used to it in just the few days before, depending on when you see this. So that is a really good point. You all made some great points. Now, as it relates to the engaging with the schools, some of our parents have multiple jobs and may feel like they can't do it. And let me just say before I go on, I started having fun with these fellows at the onset and did not tell you to rep your city. So family, you've been watching me for a long time. Go ahead and rep your city. Put your comments about what has worked for you in the chat so that other parents can see it who are signing on later, and ask your questions, because I want you to know that these fellows right here, it costs a pretty penny to get an audience with them for an hour, and you have an audience with them for a whole hour. So don't be shy. Ask your questions. I'm going to ask all of mine today. I am doing this show so I can get my questions answered as well. Okay. So now, you two you have children who are in sports. Dr. Griggs, you have a 24-year-old. And so that means that you actually had to send your child to college. Now, I imagine in my mind that I'm going to be thrilled the day that I send my child to college. But I remember my mother and I having complete conflict all summer long, and me crying all the way to college, and her crying and us crying as we parted ways, even though we were at each other's throat all summer long. What do you, and I don't think you've been in this situation, Ellis, yet, but what say, oh, you have, okay, so then what do you say to the parents who have sent their children off for the first time and they're scared because they know Johnny don't know how to, his clothes gonna come back pink because he's gonna put them all in the load at one time, and what is he doing? Is he drinking? What do you say to those parents to, number one, release some of their fears, and number two, to help support them and their child having a good year?
So one of the things I want to say, well, first of all, you have to trust that what you've done, what you poured in will have stuck enough They're responsible enough to go to college. You're responsible enough to make a decision that they can go away. My daughter actually goes to college in my city. I'm in New Orleans. Who that? Ellis Haystack. Yeah, it was Super Bowl. I got rings. See this? I can do this. I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. I don't know. I don't see. I got 28.
So Doc Greg dropped.
Ellis, Ellis, family.
You see? I see how he is. You see? You see? You see?
Don't do not talk noise to the producer. He will take the mic.
Okay, with the man with the white.
Okay.
You know what? I'm gonna give you one of my rings just for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I still got it.
I
I still got
apologize
it.
because this
You
show
know,
is going to be about us having fun, and you are along for the ride. So I'm just going to apologize to you in advance. And I'm not going to tap anybody's hand. I'm gonna let them freestyle and flow with it. I'm just gonna tell you right now, okay,
see, the
Dr.
thing
Griggs.
is, even though my daughter is in New Orleans, it is still you worry all day, every day about your child, and anytime your phone rings at night, you pray it's not them or about them. All you can do is keep instilling. Ellis and I were talking the other day. We had a conversation about parenting, and understand that you're always being parented. If you're blessed enough to have your mom and your dad or your grandmother, whoever raised you around, you got to ask them for help because they went through the exact same thing with you. The reason the three of us are on this podcast and we're on here right now is because of the people that poured into us, and they have to learn some lessons on their own. Even when you think about eagles pushing their babies out of the nest way, way up, they watch and they let them fall and they do exactly what you did. They follow the bus on the way down, and just when they're about to fall and hit the ground, they pick them up. And then they have them go back and do it again. And it's that level of independence that you want, but understanding that you have a village, a strong village of ancestors living right there behind you and backing them up. I want to give one quick pearl to what you said earlier. I didn't get to address it. Was some parents are working and they're not able to go into the school. I'm gonna tell you what worked for Annie Mae Griggs, my grandmother, in all her infinite wisdom and her switches, and slaps to
Shout
the
out
back of
to
the
Anime
head.
Griggs, Miss Anime.
Annie Mae would schedule her own random visits to the school. If she's not able to make it, I'd see her and I'm like, what's she doing here? And of course, you think you're in trouble. No, I just want them. I need to get to know them and they need to get to know me. And she would have them walk her around the school. And then sometimes she would come eat lunch with me. Sometimes she wouldn't. But make the relationship as a parent on your time with the school so they can get to know you. Because the more they know you, it's different how that judgment tree, the decision tree for that child having a bad day. Ellis is having a bad day playing with the producer buttons on the screen. He might just be hungry. He might be hungry for a Super Bowl ring, or Eric might have picked at him to the point. But I know him and I know his parents, and that's not like him. As opposed to a kid who doesn't have a support system, they treat him different.
Yeah, that's good. So let me just say what he just said, and you make sure I captured it. It is, while you may not be able to make it the first day of school, you make sure that on your own time that you schedule an appointment with the principal or someone to show you around school.
Principals, teachers,
Sure to
guidance
let
counselors.
them see you. Let the kids see you walking through. Because my daughter thinks everybody at the school knows me. Because truly, probably a lot of those teachers do know me. But so let them see you so that they can know you. They can't just get away with anything. But the other thing is you're letting the teachers know don't mess with that one. That's anime's child. Don't anime a little touch too. You don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, you know it. Yeah.
No, Miss Anime. That's not. I'm just
No,
saying.
I'm just telling Miss Anime with she might no, she like touching me. Whenever I know
Yeah,
she would touch me a
yeah,
lot.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Ellis,
Can
go
I
ahead, jump in.
No, the only thing I would add to that is for the dads, if you're able to do that, especially for people of color. So there is a narrative in this country that black men are not involved in their children's lives, and that narrative is not to know that not to be true. But the only way you just dispel it is by saying, oh, this is what Dr. Griggs is talking about. Is you say, hey, look, that was his dad was here, and his dad, her dad is going to be here. So in that instance, they may hold their bias because bias takes work to get rid of bias, but the bias is not true in this household and for this child. So I'm going to be there. So when those times when you have to go to the school, it would either be me or both of us to go to the school. I need to let them know there's a different presence. Um, and teachers will say that there's a different presence when dad is there, because there's an expectation for mom to be there. But when dad is there, that sends a message that, hey, you're serious about this child, and the decision tree changes.
A poignant message that they are serious about it. And the piece that I would say is, I'll go early and go frequently on your own
Mhm.
time. I know Dr. Griggs talked about going to have lunch, particularly when my daughter was like in the third and fourth grade, and in those grades, we went. One of us went probably every 2 or 3 weeks. But when I was going, I was on a mission. I wanted to know who her friends were, so I didn't just sit with her. I had her friends around too, and her friends would tell on her. You know, so I would go up there and I would hear stuff because the friends would tell me. So listen, you guys be the drivers to stuff because they forget you're there, and then you'll hear everything. If you don't interrupt and don't look kind of like, if you can keep your face straight, you will hear all kinds of stuff while you're driving them around here and there. Am I right, family?
No, you're absolutely right.
Yes. Now,
Now, I will
go ahead.
say, being a girl
Always.
dad, don't get attached.
Right.
Don't get attached. As a girl dad, do not get attached to any of them little girls. Do not. As a dad, you do not ask, "Hey, how's Tracy? Pops, we don't talk to her anymore." And you look at mom like, "No, we don't talk to her anymore." Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, how's Linda? What, Pops? Now you know what? Y'all want some ice cream?
Now, I'm glad you said that. Now, let me tell you something, parents, because we don't necessarily think about domestic violence and intimate partner violence with our children, right?
Right.
But I remember being in school, and a friend of mine had two black eyes, and she had got it from her boyfriend, and she was covering from for him, and we were young, and so in high school, many times they have not learned to use their voice. And so talking to your kids and letting them have a voice is really important. And I know we're in a stage where sometimes kids having a voice seems disrespectful, but sometimes there's a level of something that you a level of communication that you navigate so that they can learn to use their voices, because if we shut their voices down, then they shut those voices down too. And listen, your 13, your 14, your 15-year old, pay attention, because they may be involved in some situations that you don't know anything about. How do now, you're girl dads. Ellis, are you a girl dad? I know you're a boy dad.
Yeah.
Are you a girl dad too?
My daughter is 21. She's
And so, yeah. And so sometimes girls will not tell you stuff. Like my daughter won't tell me stuff till she's out of situations. But how do you all navigate being girl dads and 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 those relationship issues that are coming and are yet on the way, family? And let's have a plan for it before it happens.
well. I'll say number one is there is I saw a wonderful meme about how we condition girls to think that violence is okay from a very young age. And you say, "Oh, the little boy keeps hitting me. Oh, that just means he likes you." No, it
Love
doesn't.
taps.
No, 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 no,
That
no.
is that is not. And and it could be the case, but if that boy is doing that to show that he likes you, that's not life. That's not love. And he needs to find the words to say it properly instead of
Yep.
just hitting you and antagonizing you. That's not the way to do it. So we can't teach our girls that that's okay. That's number one. Number two is um, what I try to do is model what a relationship with a man should be. I feel that was my role as her father. And so to have a good relationship, a stable relationship where you're open, you're talking, and you're communicating, and then see that, and she sees that with me and my wife, and then she sees that with me and her, and then that way she's like, this is the type of relationship that I want to seek when I'm engaging in relationships as I get older. And if it's not that, then we move on. So when we see unhealthy relationships growing up, we have to work harder. That doesn't mean that we're going to automatically be doomed to having an unhealthy relationship. That just means we have to work harder to overcome them. But definitely in this role as dad, especially the dad of a girl, I try to model as much as I can in the relationship I have with my wife, and then also the relationship that I have with
Now, if you were
So,
just tuning in, that we are talking about the teachers are up. We tag them in. Parents are free, and we're talking about how to send our kids back to school safely and prepare for a good year. We are going to, in just a minute or two, check our audience comments to see what questions you have, and to answer those. So you have just a couple of minutes to get those in before we circle back to you. Now, you, Dr. Griggs.
So I absolutely agree with my esteemed colleague and fellow girl dad. You try to model, but on a more day to day level, what I found worked best for me is I keep a safe distance, and typically she and mom will confide and talk about relationships. I made the mistake of getting close to a couple of dudes early on, and the moment I started liking them, she did not like them anymore. Um,
That's a wrap, Dad. Go.
yeah, so I've learned you just kind of stay. You do a lot of ear hustling. You kind of walk through, go get a lot of cups of water, and go rummage through the fridge a lot when you hear stuff, and act like you're not listening just to figure out. And then you later ask, "Is she all right? What's up?" Because what you do know, and girl dads know, girls love their dads typically. So if she comes to you with a problem, it's pretty serious, especially if it's something that she wants to keep from mom. There are conversations, Ellis, and maybe you can help me here. I need a little backing on this one. There are uncomfortable conversations that take place that you don't want to know, that you didn't think that you, but you think that if, as you know, your image of yourself as a dad, man, my girl ever says this, and she'll never be able to say this, and then you start throwing, wait, what happened? Wait, why is that? Wait, are you serious? Wait a minute, and you start strategizing, like, okay, now what's the safest way? So again, you got to let it come to you, and then you have to really just kind of stay in the periphery. I stayed that worked for me best for me, and I just quit trying to get to know all these different, not a bunch of people, but every boy that's cute, I don't need to know their name.
neutral. I'm Sweden. I remain
Yeah,
neutral, and I let the relationship. I don't try to say I like this person or I
you
dislike this
don't do
person,
that.
because I don't want to push her towards him, or I need for her to make her own decision. And then after the fact, matter of fact, she just got out of a relationship and she made the decision on her own. And after she decided, I was like, well, I don't think he was the right one, and here's why. And so because she had a crisis, it wasn't like a significant crisis, but he was just asking too many questions about this, and then he didn't go with her to
Yeah,
take care of the crisis.
Mhm.
Should I go with you? Do you want me to go with you? I was like,
dude,
person that you
go.
care about is in a crisis. You go, and then you figure it out later, right? And then you figure out. And so when she had a similar crisis, she didn't call him. See what I'm saying? And then she realized at that moment, when I'm in a crisis, I should call the person that needs the most to me.
Yeah.
And she didn't call him, and so she was like, I got to end this relationship. So I appreciate the fact that she was like, there's no point in continuing a relationship when you don't see them as your soft place to fall.
Yeah.
And I told her after the fact that, and after she said that, well, I said, when your mother has a crisis, I don't ask a question.
I'm on my way.
I ask, where are we going? Where are we leaving? Who do I need to call? That's it. You help in the crisis first, then you figure out stuff later on.
Oh,
So
fam.
I think that's really the best thing is what Dr. Griggs is saying, fall back, be neutral as possible,
Go get a lot of water. Go to the refrigerator a lot. Just
and then offer advice after the relationship has run its course, and then you say, oh, what was, even if you like them, you can say, well, what went wrong with him, because you're not privy to the stuff that's not there. And it's that
yeah.
he could be a nice dude, but if he's not the right guy for her, you know, because you like him, you
Fam.
think he's family, that don't work.
Family, let me just tell you, I know we're talking about back to school safely, but let me just tell you that Ellis Dean just dropped like gold to you. Because what he said, that's not just for our babies, that is for us. Listen, if that person is not your safe place, if when something happens, you call them and you got to go through the interrogation, but they are not there, that's not it. It's so funny that you said that, Ellis, because I remember when my mom died 20 years ago. I was dating someone who didn't send flowers and who didn't come to the funeral. And I was no longer dating him after that, right? Like that was a wrap, Jack. But I remember thinking that changed my perspective because I thought, I want someone not that I can go through the good times with, but I want somebody that navigates the difficult terrain with me and navigates it well. Now, to your point, Dr. Griggs, my dad met two men. He met the men I was dating in college, and then he asked him what were his intentions with me. And I didn't take nobody else back to see him except my husband. That's the last
That's it.
person. Look, I learned my lesson when he asked a 16-year-old what their intentions were. And my dad met nobody else except my husband.
Yeah. And that, you know what? And he was perfectly fine with that. He was good
Yes.
with that. Believe me, he made his trips to the refrigerator like everybody else, all about the rest of us do. He heard, you know, wait till you get it right. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, my
Got
dad and
to
my
block that stuff out. It's got to block that
Yeah.
stuff out. I don't
yeah,
want to know. I don't want to know.
I don't know.
my dad and my uncles were in the yard. Like all of my uncles, I had a bunch of uncles. My uncles and my dad were in the yard and asked the poor guy, "What are your intentions with my daughter?" I never took another guy back until my husband. That was when they met. Now, so circling back, Ellis, do we have any questions in the chat that we need to address or any comments that we need to highlight? Yes. What can we do to keep our children safe in school? And Marilyn Tatum, I'm going to say, drop in the chat the age because it's different depending on the age. I was really big into when my daughter was young, I was her voice. As she got older, I started asking, what do you think you should do? Because I really wanted her to start using her critical thinking skills and me not rescuing her. But when she was young, sometimes mommy would be to the rescue without her realizing it. And I didn't want her to stop telling me stuff because sometimes I would embarrass her. Me, I would embarrass her by going to her rescue. And so she stopped telling me stuff and I didn't find this out till later because I was up there. Okay, elementary school. So Ellis, Dr. Griggs, what do you do to keep your kids safe? And I'm not sure if we're talking about there's a difference between safe from teachers because sometimes teachers can intentionally and unintentionally inflict pain to our children, and then sometimes there are other students. And so, Miss Marilyn, if you want to be a little bit more specific, we can get to that. But in the interim, go ahead.
So, Dr. Rhonda, you said something. Ellis, I'm sorry. I just wanted to define when you say the word safe in today's day and age with all that's going on in the world. As you can see, my whole tone changed. I just felt my spirit changed because with all of the shootings and all the events, the craziness that's happening in the world, keeping our child safe at school means so much more than it did when we were in school. We were thinking about teachers, you were thinking about bullying, you were thinking about the other kids and the whole nine, but now there's a whole nother element to it. And that's a big ask. It's a big question. There's a lot of prayer involved. You can know that you have instilled, again, I keep going back to what you poured into your child. You poured you and your family into that child. And you know that person is going to be the best representative. You want them to be best representative of what they've been given. I saw it pop up. She said aggressive towards aggressive other kids. Well, that's changed too because I was taught that you defend yourself. The whole concept of bullying is taken on another a life of its own. The cyberbullying, it's wicked and it's relentless. And having the relationships it's imperative you have the relationships with the administrators and the teachers at the school, that they know you and that they know to reach out to you and they can know what to look out for. I don't condone it, but as a kid, being the only black at a white school and then the only kid going to a white school from a black neighborhood, they played the violin, of course. There was a lot of quote unquote bullying going on, but there was a lot of us. So if we got bullied, I was taught to defend myself and protect myself. And as a group, if you picked on one of us, you picked on we might be this small and this big bunch of nerds, but you pick on one of us, you got all of us. And the bullies ended up being our friends. I mean, it's just the way it happened after a while. You stand up to the bully and you do it very publicly. And that's back then. Now you do it very publicly, and you only have to do it 1 or 2 times in life. We did it elementary school and in junior high. Everybody knows to leave you alone because you got a posse. There's a whole bunch of those great books, violin playing nerds over there. And if you mess with one, you're going to get it.
You look, that nerd throw that hat up and folks are swimming to your rescue.
That's it. Look, don't make me get I got a chair. I got my chair.
They are swimming to your rescue.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, the concept has changed. You have to have your child be comfortable and principled in who they are. Keep the lines of communication open. You want to have a relationship with the school. I'll never forget, there was an incident where in junior high school, a little boy called themselves putting their hands on my daughter. Both of my cars were in the shop. I had on flip-flops. I walked into the kitchen and my daughter was there, and I'm like, why is she here? And she goes, I said, what happened? Oh, okay. I took my bike. I rode my bike up to the school, my flip-flops on, and I think I had on a fisherman's hat. And I walked into the door. The principal said, yep, I knew he was on his way. I knew he was on his way.
On a bike, flip-flops, family.
Bicycle, yes, because I wanted to talk to the kid and his parent. Call his daddy and call his uncles, call whoever I want to talk to, why he put his hands on my little girl. So things are different. The dynamics are very different right now. So I think it's very important to have a relationship with the teachers and with the administrators as best you can. I'm sorry, Ellis.
And I'm going to add, I work in juvenile justice, and that question about safety really hit me because I have some kids as young as 11, 12, 13 who are in the system. And when I ask, why are you here? And they tell me they had a gun. But darling, why do you have a gun? And then these kids tell me that their friends were shot, that someone pulled a gun at them, that someone shot them. And sometimes they've never even told their parents about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so safe neighborhoods seems like it should be a right. But as I listen to these young people talk, it feels like we're in a time when it's a luxury. And so keeping your kids active in extracurricular activities so that they are around and learn how to receive instruction, learn how to be yelled at without fighting. If you being coached, you're going to be yelled at a lot. And this whole thing, you disrespected me. You learn how to receive yelling and screaming and all of that. And when they get in trouble, don't yank them off the football team or the basketball team without a whole lot of deep thinking around it. And I caution you to bring them off the team, because that is a place where they're learning more than just how to play a sport, but how to be a team member, how to be respectful, how to take feedback that does not feel pleasant, those kinds of things. And so getting them involved and busy, so busy that they don't have time to be on Snapchat, Instagram, and all those things. Ellis.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there, but I will start with the question first. Safe. For elementary school kids, you have to kind of know your child. So if your child is more extroverted, like I was, I didn't have any problem putting hands on folks. So you didn't have to tell me.
Yeah.
Okay. You mess with me enough, you was going to get some hands. All right. I had to learn how to turn that down and engage in other ways when I was younger. Yeah. Now, if your child is more introverted, you might want to think about taking them to self-defense courses, taekwondo, karate, judo, all those things where they can feel more comfortable in being able to defend themselves. And it's not about them being aggressive. It's about being able to defend themselves. You want a child to feel confident that if they are challenged in a way that they can't get out of, that they can defend themselves. And so that's one way to keep themselves safe. And now we know internet and all kind of stuff is a different ball game. So I'm going to stick in the lane that Marilyn was asking. If there's other aggressive children. The other thing is you have to teach them that the repercussions for that word snitching is less than the repercussions of them continually being bullied and being punched and hit. So there is this kind of culture of don't snitch, don't tell, oh, you're a tattletale, blah, blah, blah. But on the other side of that is them enduring harassment and the mental anguish that ongoing harassment can do to a child. So the consequences of snitching is going to be less than the consequences potentially where if a child is continually bullied and harassed, they could get to a point where they start to think about harming themselves, and you never want to get to that point. So self defense classes, if they're more introverted, if they're more extroverted, you say, hey, look, if they touch you, you got the green light. Put hands on them, and I'll come deal with that after the fact. But I need you to show, as Doc Griggs said, you show some people a couple times that you're willing to throw that, they'll leave you alone. I promise you that. You know,
And
Now, Alice, to your point too, though, if there's ever a weapon involved, there's no such thing as that. You have to tell. Someone pulls a gun on you at school. You have to let someone know. That is nothing to try to handle yourself. It's not snitching. It's at school. It shouldn't be there anyway. It's important.
And let me just say, we're talking like our child are the victims of bullying, but let me talk to you about your child being bullies, okay? And they don't become bullies on their own. Many times they're modeling the behavior that they see at home. All right. Now,
Say that again, Doc. Can you say that one more time?
They are modeling the behaviors that they see at home. And so it's when you start,
like they say at church, if you talk about you, if you can't say amen, just
listen.
say out.
And I would say, because here's the thing, how you talk to them will be how they talk to other people.
And
And
it
how,
starts early when you hear them talking to those dolls.
yeah, I mean, listen. I knew I was in trouble, family, when our TVs are all on the walls. So we were in a hotel, and my daughter discovered that TVs were on on surfaces, and so she started turning that TV on and off, on and off, on and off. And she was still in a baby crib or whatever, and so but she could toddle over. And so I said, "Don't you touch that TV again." She took Elmo's finger and started turning that TV on and off, on and off, on and off. And I knew I was in hot water then. I knew I was in trouble. But I remember listening to her reprimand Elmo. Okay. You remember Tickle Me Elmo? And that was and she was probably 2. But that was when I saw who I was and what I was doing. And I didn't like what I was seeing. Because I didn't like what she was doing, and what she was doing, she had got from me and her father. And I'm gonna blame her father, but I'm gonna tell you it was for real me, right? And so when you start seeing how they talk to dolls and how they talk to friends, before you jump on them, I want you to examine yourself, because they may have got those communication strategies from you. Now, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a person of faith. I'm married to a person of faith. We think we're pretty decent people. But I will tell you, I realized that day that I saw her talking to Elmo, I was not getting it right. And I didn't even realize it until I saw her talking to Elmo. So, family, everything is not about how rotten those teachers are. And if you are a teacher, listen, I think you are in one of the most noble professions on this planet. Sometimes it is about how we are engaging, and sometimes we are parenting from unparented places. If you are on this segment and you are parenting from an unparented place, do not repeat the generational curses. Get yourself some help so you can learn how to bring your best self to the table. And that's the best thing we can tell you about how to get your kids through safely, is for you to also deal with some of your unexamined areas.
Well, I was first I like to apologize to Elmo for that abuse.
Yeah, man.
At the hands of your child. That Elmo.
Listen, she wasn't playing with Elmo, okay?
We love you, Elmo. We love
All you want to do is get tickled in
She
there.
wasn't playing with Elmo. She told Elmo how to carry the grass.
Okay, so let me apologize to Elmo on right. Second thing is this. If your child is bullying, it could also be they feel a loss of control, right? And so that's the other side of that bullying coin, right? They could be getting it from you and how you're approaching other people. But the other thing is that child feels a loss of control, and then therefore they get into a space where they notice that if they do this, they get more control of the things and the people around them. And so they start engaging that behavior more because they don't have control in any other areas of their life. And so this is a place where they can enact control. And so there's 2 sides of that coin when your child is the bully. But the thing is you cannot do is deny the fact that your child.
That's
You
good.
cannot deny that. because you have to deal with it. Because if you ignore it, it's going to get worse, and their escalation is going to happen on either side. Either your child is going to continue to escalate, or that child getting bullied is going to get that point where they have enough, and they're going to seek relief, and that relief might be to the detriment of you and your family.
And understand that you can be the bully and being bullied, because many times, particularly children who are in larger frames, in larger bodies, they are bullied, and they're bullied at home. They're bullied by their siblings. They're bullied by their parents. They're bullied by other kids. And then and the it's like the community is not safe, and their community shapes them. I think there was in Wakanda, I don't Black Panther. It was, if you don't embrace the child will burn down the village. I know I missed that all the way up, but you know what I'm saying. so
You
let's
did.
help our
It's, we
children.
got,
Go ahead with it.
We good. We good. We
Right.
good. We good. We good.
it's close
For
enough.
those, if you are tuning in, listen, we have talked about a range of issues, from communicating, from dad girl dad places, from from bullying. Let's pivot in just our final minutes and talk a little bit about cyberbullying and what's safe. I did not want my child to have, to have access to the computers when she was not in the room with us. And she had been in a certain type of school, and we transitioned. They gave her an iPad or something, and that was her first exposure to it. And figuring out how to navigate homework assignments, and then that they were supposed to work collectively, and then all the shenanigans that was happening, you know, that they were labeling classwork that wasn't really classwork. That can really, and every time I figured out how to check her, she was smarter than me. She was faster than me. She figured out how to not be checked anymore. So family, yeah.
That sound like your child. That sound like your child. I mean,
Sound about right.
I got a 13-year-old
That's on brand. That is on
who is
brand.
smarter than her PhD dad and her MD mom. She's smart. And listen, I want you all who are out there who don't know what you're doing to understand that there's some of us who are degreed up, who figuring it out just like you are. We got more degrees and we have more resources, but we figuring it out. So don't think anybody on this panel is perfect. At least not this person.
Yeah.
Yes, Golden Williams. Yes. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, family.
Now, I'm not smarter than any fifth grader or a 3-year-old. If you've ever seen them with the on the phones these days, I would actually defer the beginning of the answer to this to Ellis, because he lives in the cyberspace, and is more knowledgeable about what's out there than I am. I'm still
Wait a
on
minute,
Facebook.
Ellis, you need to celebrate that statement. Did you hear what he
Gotta
just
give it to
said?
him.
yeah,
He's not
I'm
gonna say it
gonna
again.
clip that out. I'm gonna clip that out. I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna send it to him. I'm just gonna keep blowing his phone
Yes.
up with it.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Griggs.
What about this part? This part. All right.
Remember when the cyberspace? You one click away, beat off this screen.
No, but again, I would absolutely yield to Ellis's expertise in the cyberspace. Like I said, I'm still on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and I can't figure out TikTok yet.
Yeah, and that's old people stuff, because they on Discord and other stuff right now. We not even on they playing field. Ellis, what you got to say?
I would say first, at the macro level, if your child is engaging with somebody on the cyberspace, they're typically searching for something that they're not getting. And so, again, as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Manick, you've got to find it within yourself to feel in that where your child doesn't feel like they need to get affection, attention, whatever elsewhere. And that's how a lot of these kids are getting sucked into these relationships, because they're not getting the attention and affection that they're needing, not wanting, but that they're needing in order to feel healthy and whole. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is monitor, right? They're on these smartphones. They got millions of apps, and I think at one point when I was in this space, on a full-time basis, there was something like 200 to 500,000 apps getting developed on a daily basis, right? Wow. So it's like there is a significant number of apps. But the beautiful thing is there's apps that can also monitor, where they can't do anything without you getting a notification, right? And so that's the number two. So as a parent, step in. Number one, make sure that they are fulfilled both emotionally and physically to where they're not going to be seeking anything else outside. The second thing is put the apps on the phone, right? If they have to have a phone, and I know it's typically, we've done some polling on this, it's typically around middle school when parents feel comfortable giving their kids phones. Sometimes it's earlier.
Don't feel comfortable, but go
And
ahead.
with all the challenges that we've had, and we've seen some people are giving their kids phones earlier, but it's right around middle school when parents seem to be giving their kids smartphones. Before you hand that phone over, have all of those things in place. Have
Yeah.
all of the safeguards in place before you, because when you try to take it back and do it after the fact, now you create an adversarial situation. If they've got it up front, then that's what they're going to be used to, and whatever you condition them to. It's like one of the things, I'm not a big fan of his, but one of the things I do enjoy, one of the things that Dr. Phil would say is a relationship is a series of negotiations. You get what you negotiate, right? And so that parent-child relationship is there's some negotiation going on there. Yes, you're the parent. Yes, you have the power, but there's some negotiation. So if you tell them up front what the parameters are, they're going to follow into that. But if you give them leeway and then try to tighten it up, it's much harder to do it because they're like, this is what, and then they're going to start seeking the other ways to what you had before. So when you give them that phone, make sure you've got those locks in place. There's an app where the phone will shut off at a certain time. You could turn it where they were like they can't do anything with it, and it's your power and you set the time when it cuts off and the time when it cuts back on. And yes, they're going to scream and yell and squirm because they're friends and this and that. They're going to bring all that stuff and say, well, that's if you go live in your friend's house. That's my mom.
Everything you just said, all of that. And I'm going to take it a step further and say, what you negotiate, write down, because it becomes blurry. The lines become blurry later, and they'll say, "Oh, I don't remember you saying that." We have right now on our refrigerator a contract that was executed with my daughter on what she needed to be able to do in order to get this dog. What she said she would do. She was going to clean up her room. She was going to clean up dog poop. She was all of that. It's not. I didn't say that, Mom. It's Obama is hanging on the magnet, keeping it on the refrigerator right now, so that she can see what she agreed to. That she is not. That she's violating, and why she can't do blah 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 blah. So I'm going to say extend that to prior to getting a phone, and I'm also going to say, I, you know, there's this thing because then these pictures are being sent, this bullying is happening, people are talking about your kids, they're snapshotting them while they're doing stuff on the phone with them and then sending the pictures out to folks. And so a lot of things can go wrong, and you need to, if they old enough to get a phone, you need to think about if they're old enough to go to therapy, because likely they're going to encounter some situations that they would really need to talk it through with and won't feel comfortable talking to you about it. Just saying.
Developmentally appropriate. Those are two words I want y'all to recognize. Developmentally appropriate. When my sons started becoming older and teenagers and getting to high school, I said, look, and I told them, you got a real man-to-man conversation. Your friends, y'all gonna start engaging in activities with young girls and all this other stuff with others. Even if somebody sends you a picture,
Yeah.
do not share it. You do not keep it on your phone. I said because it is a federal offense if you share that picture. Straight up.
It really is.
It really is.
And they don't know
send it to somebody in another state. Now you created state charges for child pornography.
Yep.
He said she just said, I don't know. It's child pornography, right? Whether it is, whether you agree with it or not, it's not for you to agree. That's the way it is. And so therefore, if somebody sends you a picture, delete it and say, hey,
Immediately.
Immediately, do not have it on your phone because you can get dragged into something, and particularly as a black male. Somehow sentences get a little bit harsher and get a little bit longer when they see black and male in terms of in that courtroom. And so you don't ever want to open that up. And that's for the boys. For the girls, if he's asking, if your relationship is dependent upon you sending a picture of you topless or otherwise, that's not the relationship for you.
That's not for you.
Full stop. Okay,
Right.
in the scene. That's not the dude for you. If you've got to send him a picture of yourself topless or otherwise compromised, to maintain this relationship. And just
Talk
be like,
about
and just be like, hey, look, well, then I guess we don't go together no more.
it. Right. Absolutely. Oh, I love it. Dr. Griggs,
Yeah.
what you got to say?
No, the only thing that I have to add is, I mean, you're talking. I see we're talking cell phones, and that's important. But there is technology now. Parents, we're about to go back to school. You need to talk to your Wi-Fi provider, or find out there are apps where you can turn off the internet for the house.
Hmm. Yep.
For the house, the whole
Yes,
house.
yes, you can turn it off or turn it on in different rooms. Like, it's even localized. Like, you can turn it off in the den, in the bedroom, and keep it in your room. Like, if you, depending on who your provider is, there's an app that does it, and you'd be surprised how effective that is when it comes to negotiating. But you can have full control of the access in your house.
And listen, family, have them. I mean, that is great. I think we need to do a whole show on what we're talking about these last few minutes. But also having that contract that we were talking about, what time they turn their phone in, because a whole lot of these kids can't sleep because they're getting up at 4 a.m. And listen, and I'm not talking about what I heard. I'm talking about what I walk. I walk through the night. I'm checking and whatnot. That's just who I am. So I walked in my daughter's room one night, and shit, that heifer had her computer out at 4 a.m. And I was like, I thought we took your computer from you. She had it. Okay. So listen. You might need to get the computers and lock them up somewhere because I
Are you
got to
sure it was the same computer and not a different one?
Woo!
see. You know what, Dr. Griggs? You know what, Dr.
Amazon, $99 on Amazon.
Because one of her friends had a whole nother phone after her mom took the phone. So family, this is what I need you to understand. Our kids are smarter than us. I don't care how smart you think you are. I don't care how degree up you are.
I will give you a free hour of family therapy between you and your daughter.
Listen, you got time today? Do you have time today? Listen, thank you all for tuning in. It always happens like this, that time flies when you're having fun. I want each of you to tell the people who are listening how they can, if they want to reach out to you to invite you for paid, compensated opportunities to speak at their shindigs and events, how they can reach you. You be sure to drop in the chat or share it now how they can reach you. And notice that I said paid and compensated. Not going over there for for a hot dog and a Happy Meal.
Right.
All right. So if you have a website you want to draw them to, you can drop it in the chat. Okay, family. Listen, thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you for showing up. I will tell you that we have a wonderful slate of shows lined up for August and September that I'm not letting the cat out the bag yet. But if you want to find Dr. Eric Griggs, he's on LinkedIn. You can go to www.docgriggs.com. Griggs.com. Yeah, this is the mayor's. This is the mayor's choice.
See,
The ambassador, the man,
two doctor and two.
100 black men. Listen, ladies, 100 black men. Listen, now wait a minute. Dr. Griggs is married. He's off the market, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
he's affiliated with 100. I'm about to get in trouble by Miss Griggs. Miss
Right.
Griggs. I'm doing that.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Ellis Dean at blackdoctor.org. He is the person who is behind the scenes doing all this stuff. I always have Ellis Dean on the front side because when I tell you this man is a wealth of knowledge and he makes me look real good. Now, I don't need too much help, but he helped me out a lot. So, family, thank you. Tune in every week from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 12 to 1. And Dr. Griggs, you have a show on. Tell us about your show.
I do. It's called Get Checked, Get Fit, Get Moving with someone you might see that look familiar up top. The extraordinaire producer, host, expert, exporter. He's Mr. Everything we do. Get Checked, Get Fit, Get Moving. It's on men's health. It's every other week. We talk about topics like this, how specifically with how it relates to men. But you know that if we talk about the men, the ladies have to be in the conversation and part of it.
I know one thing. I've never been invited on this show, and so I'm just going to have to Bogart Debo my way in to talk about men's mental health. in May or July. I'm just saying.
No. You don't have to bogart anything. So Ella, sound like that sounds like our next show is with Dr.
But
Mattox.
it sounded like I was volunteering, didn't I?
It sounds like a reverse invitation.
Yeah. And, if she says yes, we will. If she'll allow us to say yes, then we will do it. Yes, absolutely, 1,000%.
Well, family, again, thank you. Please share. If you tuned in late, let me just say you missed it. There was lots of laughter, but there were amazing lessons learned. These fellows were dropping gold. It was a gold mine on this show. Go back, share it on your page. There's some girl dad that does not know what he's doing. These guys nailed it. There is a single parent who doesn't know what she's doing. We've nailed it. There's some married, PhD, MD degreed up folk who don't know what they're doing. We all in this together figuring it out. So love you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah.